Hello everyone, my name is Noah and welcome to this Stet Studio video. Today we're going to be looking at The Change Tarot by Jessica Dorr, illustrated by Xaviera Lopez, which is based on / connected to the Tarot for Change, using cards for self-acceptance and growth by Jessica Dorr, so very similar names. Before we get started, I just wanted to say this deck, presumably connecting with this book, means that it is going to have a lot to do with psychology, therapy, that sort of stuff. It's going to be very gentle. I'm going to do my best not to talk about anything, triggering or anything like that. Not at all. But it will be about therapy and whatnot, so I thought I would let you know about that. This is a book about tarot. It is about therapy, and it combines her understanding of tarot as well as her understanding of psychology and therapy and counseling. And this is a book that I read, I think I finished it at the beginning of this year, if I remember correctly. And you can see I did end up highlighting quite a bit, and it's a book that I've been using as research for increasing my understanding of tarot in a way that's slightly different from the norm. And I will have a link to this book down below if you're interested. I would definitely recommend it. It's really good. It is a long book, especially for something that gets into a lot of things that you need to think about more, I suppose. Rather than, a novel of this length, at least for me, would be a much easier read. It is very approachable. I do have a little bit of a background in psychology, only in that I have taken some different psychology classes as part of my high school and then undergraduate education. So I do understand a lot of the terms in here that were brought up, at least surface level beforehand, but I do think that even if you have no familiarity with this field of study, which a lot of us, I'm assuming, don't, it's very approachable. It's not very jargony. Any specific terms that she does use, she explains. It's very accessible, and it's also accessible from the tarot angle as well. If you are new to tarot, it is not an overwhelming, I expect you to know everything about tarot already type of read. That's not what it is at all. So yeah, that's what the book is like, I think. I don't know yet, but I think it would be a good companion to this deck. So we're going to open it up and start looking at it. So this is what the inside of the lid looks like. I guess I should show you the outside of the lid. Very Rider-Waite-Smith iconography, very typical modern classic tarot iconography. It's a Hay House publication, so it is a mass market publication. This is what the back of the tarot deck looks like, or the back of the box. We have this captivating and transformative 78-card tarot deck seamlessly intertwines the realms of psychology and spirituality, designed to offer a truly unique and profound approach to tarot reading. This deck serves as a powerful tool for healing, self-empowerment, and spiritual awakening. The Change Tarot explores new ways of looking at the traditional Rider-Waite-Smith imagery, guided by psychology, behavioral science, spirituality, and old stories. This allows for a holistic understanding of the human experience and encourages readers to explore the intricacies of their inner worlds and uncover hidden truths. It says the cover design is Lisa Vega and the cover art is Xaviera Lopez. And I do want to say before we get into this, this is not meant to be any sort of replacement for whatever sort of therapy or support you're receiving now. This is something that maybe you could work on your own or in tandem with whatever services you are already receiving or may want to receive. This is not meant to replace that or anything like that. And I'm sure it says something similar in the guidebook, which this is what that is. All right, so it has the whole thing on the back, and then it has a little bit about each of the people involved in creating this deck. Jessica Dorr is a writer and licensed social worker. Prior to earning her master's degree in social work, she spent several years in psychology and self-help publishing. She is the author of Tarot for Change, Using the Cards for Self-Care, Acceptance, and Growth, and the best-selling newsletter Offerings. This is going to throw me because this is The Change Tarot, and the book is Tarot for Change. So if I get confused, please excuse me. And we have Xaviera Lopez is a Chilean artist and animator. Her linear drawings, animations, and short-form looping videos incorporate simplified, yet highly contextual self-portraits and images that display the meeting place of the material and the ethereal, challenging perceived delineations between the felt and the seen. So that is a little bit about both people who were involved in creating this deck. This is what it looks like on the inside. Again, it's a Hay House publication, and this came out in 2023. We have an introduction, getting to know the deck, card interpretations for the major and minor arcana, working with the Change Tarot, about the author, and about the artist. So I'm going to open it up to the introduction. This deck and guidebook featuring artist Xaviera Lopez's take on Pamela Coleman Smith's art in the iconic Rider-Waite-Smith Tarot offers perspectives on the symbols and images of the tarot from the fields of psychology, behavioral science, spirituality, and old stories. The interpretations offered are derived and adapted from my first book, Tarot for Change, a collection of which I've considered at times to be two well-kept secrets from the fields of behavioral change and psychotherapy. It is important to me that my ideas about what the symbols and images of the tarot may mean are taken as some among many meanings, because I understand meanings as something that is made and remade in context, rather than something fixed or fully formed. In offering just some of the many meanings that I've made from inside my own contexts over the years, self-help publishing, professional psychology, social work, and my personal life and social locations, I hope to provide an example of what it can look like to make meaning in one's own worlds, meaning that remains open to change and new learning. Onward, Jessica Dorr. And then we have a little bit about the deck, which basically explains the idea of the suits, as well as the major arcana. So we have a little bit about the major arcana, a little bit about the minor arcana, and then the suits. And we have card interpretations. Going back to the contents, I'm going to go to page 110 to see what working with the tarot looks like. Will there be spreads? We'll talk about the ideas behind the deck. Here we are. Tarot is best learned creatively and with respect for your particular desires, values, needs, and circumstances. There are so many ways to work with tarot that it seems a large part of the practice is learning to decide for yourself what's of use and what isn't. And then it talks about different things that you can do to create a tarot practice, connecting with your deck, asking questions, orienting your practice, which I think means deciding what the symbols mean to you as well as what they are traditionally associated with is what it looks like. Of course, there's a little more to that, but I really don't want to read this whole book because I don't want to give away everything that the author says without having permission to do so. So here we have the deck. We pull it out of the box. This is what the bottom of the box looks like. I really like these soft pastels, and seeing those colors on the box and in the illustrations was what kind of inspired this soft pastel setup. So this is a paper band. This is my preferred type of packaging for tarot, if at all possible, of, you know, something that can be recycled easily, something that isn't plastic. I can understand the desire for plastic wrap around a deck because you may worry about during shipping or production it getting moist, but I feel like less materials used the better. And this is what the deck looks like. I will say there's a little bit of, it looks like maybe glue from the, or no, the paper got peeled up on the back. That's okay. This might bother some people. I don't know if this is maybe the deck I got was defective or this is how they all are. I can't tell you. This won't bother me. I will probably forget about it, and as I shuffle, the edges tend to get dinged up on their own, so that is not a big deal to me. As for the cardstock, it's nice and thick. It's smooth, but not super glossy. I'd say it's probably satin or semi-gloss maybe, but it feels kind of like matte. The back has a slightly different texture than the front. Like I said, it's a nice thickness. It's actually pretty much exactly the thickness that I like. So I'm going to bring you down a little bit and we are going to get started. Okay, here we are. One more thing before we get started. If you are new to this channel, if this is perhaps the first of my videos that you're watching, I am both a lover of tarot and an artist. So a lot of what I will talk about is from maybe an artist's point of view in the design for the deck. I'm not a designer, I'm not a graphic designer, I'm not anything like that, but I am an artist, which you will see in a lot of my other videos, so that's something I will talk about. I will also talk about maybe a little bit how I interpret the cards and what the symbols mean to me as I first see them. And there are lots of other videos on this channel about tarot decks that you can watch if you're interested, and you will find them linked below. So the first card we have here is the Fool. This is, as I'm sure most of these cards, if not all of them, are going to be very classically designed. This is, you know, the person in their little outfit walking off the cliff with their little dog and their bindle and all of that. The first thing that strikes me about this card is the level of detail, especially in the outfit. I'm going to see if I can get it to focus close up. It doesn't really look like it. Oh well, sorry. I hope you can see it. But it's very interesting. Their outfit is incredibly detailed compared to, you know, the rest of the design. So that feels like it really draws your eye to it. And I personally love a good floral design. And I think it's interesting they're carrying a rose as well. I love their sort of 1920s almost style going on with the short hair, the sort of turban with a little feather, and their outfit. But yeah, I like that. I like the color palette. That is one thing about the traditional Rider-Waite Smith and its like centennial editions, anniversary editions, all that. I've never really liked the color palette. So when I buy Rider-Waite Smith clones, as they're called, I tend to go for things that are a little bit different, not exact, you know, updates or replicas. We have the Magician, again, with the incredibly detailed area. In this case, it's around the edges, and then we have the more simplistic in the center. As always, he's got all of his tools right there, but he also has this extra stick. Oh, and I see an Ouroboros as his belt. That's a very clever way of including that. I'm noticing the backgrounds are very simple, so rather than having the Ouroboros behind him and a bunch of things, it makes sense to make it his belt. We have the High Priestess. I love how her dress turns into water. That was the very first thing I noticed. And she's got pomegranates, it looks like, in the background. I can't tell if... They probably do, but I can't tell if the red bits of the pomegranates are symbolic of anything. So I'm going to open this up and we will see. I like to go through the guidebook and at least look at a couple examples of what the descriptions are, so you can kind of get an idea of how detailed the guidebook is. We have the High Priestess. Secrets tell themselves in all kinds of ways. They're spoken in the choices we make and the ways we behave toward others and ourselves. Behavior is also a language. Even if we haven't moved our mouths and made a sound, we can still speak, even if the message comes out scrambled or distorted. The High Priestess sits at the threshold of that moment when you realize you should be listening, perhaps in a different way than you have been. She may be an indicator that something in the room is either not being said or may require a bit of decoding. Not all secrets need to be spoken aloud. Keeping a secret can be and often is protective. Recognizing the ways that unspoken truths are expressed, influencing our lives and choices, can also be protective, because if we do not acknowledge our secrets, they might express themselves in ways that undermine our values. So this guidebook is more about the meaning of the cards or the message that comes with each card rather than any sort of visual explanation or explanation of the symbols and visuals. So that's fine. That might not be for everybody, but it, you know, again, it's not something that bothers me. They kind of look like animals. Like that one looks like a monkey, as does that one. I really don't know. This one looks like maybe some kind of bird. I do like how the pillars are pineapple trees. That's kind of interesting. And she has the moon down here as well as the triple moon up there. Yeah, I really like this card. It's simple yet detailed also and effective. And then we have the Empress, and she has more of those designs on her. It almost looks like a kimono. We'll call it a robe, though. I don't know if it's specifically a kimono or just a robe that's reminding me of one. And she has her crown and some sort of... It's not a scepter because it's really short, but something that she's holding. I really like the juxtaposition of the simplistic areas. For example, there's really no skin detail. She's just very flat. It's very simplified, yet there are areas that are very detailed. And like I said, I like that contrast and that sort of vision of it. We have the Emperor. I very much enjoy these rigid columns behind him. That does remind me more of Emperor energy. He's got the legs of a suit of armor on. That's interesting. And he's got a staff kind of that looks like an ankh along with his traditional sphere thingy. I don't know the names of them. And he's got 4 ram's heads. I think that's pretty traditional as well. We've got the Hierophant. I love her. I love her so much. And I love how the flowers also kind of look like eyes. It's got that sort of mystical, psychedelic look without really changing too much of what we would expect from a traditional tarot deck. And you've got the 2 students or supplicants, whatever you want to call them, pilgrims, come to talk to her. Again, we've got the pillars that kind of look like pineapples, and then we have a ravioli who will be walking into frame any second now. There he is. I don't know if you can see him. He's right on the edge. Aren't you, my boy? Yeah, all right. He's going to go lay down, hopefully, somewhere else. And again, we've got the continuing flower motif that's very similar to the High Priestess's outfit. It's different, but similar. I'm noticing a continuation of flowers on clothing. Yes, my boy. Yes, I love you. You smell like cat litter. Lovely. All right, you need to lay down, my boy. No, and when I said that, I did not mean right here. Come on, my boy. Go. Oh, yeah, I know. Oh. Now you really need to go exam to fix this, my boy. All right, I will be right back. Okay, now that everything's been cleaned up from the boy and he's gone off to lay in the sun somewhere, we can continue. Thankfully, I think we were pretty much done talking about this card. And then we have the Lovers. This is a very, I mean, a lot of these cards are very biblical, but this one to me feels incredibly biblical just because it's very obvious to me. This is supposed to be the Garden of Eden with Adam and Eve, the snake, the angel. I like it. I am not a Christian. I do not, connect with it in that way, but I do think that's interesting, and I feel like you could get some really juicy readings. Let's see what the guidebook says about this card. Some interpretations of the Lovers say that this card represents choice, and for others it indicates a significant romantic relationship. Others read the card as relating to love as a spiritual exercise, the experience of a union that transcends life's separations and returns us to wholeness. The Lovers can represent choice in the context of love relationships as an opportunity for personal evolution. Though we didn't get to choose what we learned about love as children, as adults we can pick lovers based on things we want to learn in relationships, like how to receive or be vulnerable. If you've drawn this card, you might consider, what lessons and skills am I ready to learn in love? Is a significant other someone with whom I can learn the lessons that I'm wanting to learn and ready to learn, and then some I don't yet see? Imagine that the Lovers represents this choice. Do we continue to live according to our misunderstandings about love, or do we learn to go beyond them and develop new skills for going to places that scare us? And that is a really great example of why I really enjoyed Tarot for Change, and I think I'm going to enjoy this deck as well. It makes me think about cards in ways that I haven't before, and in ways I think will be really helpful for my personal growth and my tarot practice. Then we have the Chariot. We've got the person with their Sphinx and their chariot, obviously. And yeah, it's pretty standard. I, again, like the detail and the stars of their crown and their chariot. It's a very traditional sort of stylistic motif to have that a six-pointed star? Yeah, six-pointed star. And I don't know. I enjoy it. I think it works. It's interesting that this person looks like they're either do not have any legs or kind of absorbed into the block itself. And then I like that top. That's interesting because it could wobble either way. It has that energy of the chariot, of steadiness, of movement. But if you sort of hesitate, it's going to wobble and falter. So I think that's a very interesting way to include that. And then we have Strength. This card is very plain compared to a lot of them. It really doesn't have any border, but I really do like it. The lion looks like someone who's never seen a lion. It also kind of reminds me of those videos of the dog who wears a little lion hat of the mane, or kind of like a cowl around his head. Again, with the flowers, I really love that sort of motif that we're continuing through. I don't know. I think, and obviously I don't know what the creators are thinking, but this is what it comes to me, is flowers are growing, there's personal growth, that sort of thing. So yeah, I think that is kind of what the flowers make me think of. We have the Hermit, pretty standard. I love these shades of bluey greens, as well as the way they portrayed the light, depicted the light as a star rather than like an actual flame. I think that's interesting because we'll see later the card, the Star, which I feel like kind of loops back to this. Maybe this light is the illumination of what they learn from being solitary in this moment. We have the Wheel of Fortune. This is never one of my favorite cards, aesthetically. I just think that the circle is kind of boring, but, I understand the point of it. It's not my vibe, but I do think that it's very well depicted here. It's very similar to the traditional design. It's clean, it's nice. Yeah, not much to say about it because I don't find the traditional design that interesting. And then we have Justice. We have sort of wheat or grain. And we have their sword and their scales and something that's sticking out there. I don't know if that's maybe a foot or a shield or something. It's not entirely clear to me. It's nice. I like the color palette choice. It's very impactful. We have the Hanged Man, one of my personal favorite cards. And I like the way this is a living tree rather than just, I don't know, a T or a cross of wood. Not that it needs to be a living tree, but I think that's interesting, especially with like the leaves and the foliage growing off of it, because it kind of leads to, again, a sense of growth. Even if you're suspended, even if you're going through this really hard thing, even if you're, you know, sort of sacrificing movement and action for insight, you're still growing, you know, even if you're not moving, even if no one else can see it from the outside. And we have Death, which is also one of my favorite cards, but I don't actually really find the traditional design of the card all that interesting. So again, you know, I don't have too much to say about this because I don't look at it and go, oh, I want to talk about it. But I do really love the details. You have the skull and crossbones, or maybe they're crossed swords, on the scarf neck piece that the horse is wearing. Got more flowers on this. Maybe he's supposed to be a pope or a religious figure. You have all sorts of people. This person has died, the king, and it really just kind of shows that sort of, you know, death comes for everyone regardless of who you are. And that really relates to the idea of not literal death, which this card can represent, but usually it's more of an idea of change, maybe a death of a mindset, a death of a way of life, a change in your state of being, a change in your understanding of yourself. And that will come to all of us. A lot of people resist it. Most people resist it. I know I can be really resistant to change, even though I know that it will help me in the end, which is very similar to the idea of nobody wants to die. They're going to be very resistant to that. And we have Temperance, and you have the 1 foot on land, 1 foot in the water, kind of showing that balance between the two states of matter, or perhaps the idea of combining what things you learned as a child, things you're learning now about yourself, and using them together. The idea of not throwing the baby out with the bathwater, I guess. Finding a common ground or balance between ideas and things and growth. And we have the Devil, another card that I'm not all that interested in stylistically. Yeah, it's a scary demon dude with 2 people on chains. I do like the berry tail, though. I think that's cool, that's interesting. I wonder if this person had a berry tail before it was on fire. Maybe the devil lit it on fire. It's a very intentionally scary-looking card that doesn't have to be, or at least the interpretation doesn't have to be super scary. I do think that shock value, so to speak, goes along with the meaning of the card. That sort of, oh, it's bad, that automatic thought of maybe your shadow aspects, your shadow self. To talk about Carl Jung, I think he's a psychologist. I forget specifically what his title is, but then we have the Tower. This is the card that stresses me out the most, as I feel like it probably does for a lot of people. This is about sort of everything going back to the very beginning, being leveled, a clean slate, and all of that. This is a very typical design. I'm very picky about my preferences for the Tower card, just because, I don't know, I don't find this all that interesting, but it conveys its meaning. Obviously, I'm not saying this is a bad tarot deck because it doesn't meet my aesthetic tastes. They're going for a certain style, and they're doing very well with it. They're really, I feel like, so far at least, 16 cards into the Major Arcana, 17 if you count the Fool, I guess. Really, I feel like doing a great job of updating the traditional Rider-Waite-Smith designs while creating uniqueness and keeping the traditional style and vision of Pamela Coleman Smith. Here we have the star. Like I mentioned in the Hermit, it's the same 8-pointed star up there. And yes, the person pouring water. The star is sort of the light at the end of the tunnel coming out after the storm, after all the previous cards, and this depicts it very well. And we have the moon, we have the 2 wolves, the lobster or crayfish, and the towers. We've seen them in the background of a few other cards. And the moon, I really like the face of the moon because that is an illusion. You know, when you look at the moon, it does kind of look like there's a face in it, but it's really just the illusion of like craters and raised bits creating shadows. And that really ties in nicely with the moon's meaning of illusions and trying to figure out what is true and what is not. And we have the sun card. This card I find kind of creepy, mainly because the child's just staring you down, as is the sun in this case. I really like the sunflowers in their hair and on the wall. Sunflowers are some of my favorite flowers, so that's no surprise. We have Judgment, and I don't know, it's an angel that's playing the horn. It's supposed to be the rapture from Christian mythology, from Christian stories. So yeah, that's what it is. I have had a hard time understanding Judgment as a card, but I do think that it is one of those cards that's really worth understanding beyond just what you see here. And maybe, I know for myself, it was kind of a like knee-jerk reaction of, oh, I don't want to be judged by a certain religion's rules and, I don't know, mindset, especially if I am not a part of that religion. So I'm going to see what they say about Judgment just for funsies. There are two general ways that I read the image on the Judgment card, as a call to adventure and as resurrection. A call to adventure is an invitation to change, to leave behind an old way for a new one, to remember who we are and forget who we are not. The metaphor of resurrection pulls our attention towards something in us that can endure even when subjected to the destructive forces of this world. It asks, how do we continue to do what's right, even when it seems that right is futile in the face of exploitative and destructive forces that seem larger than life. The limitations of being alive in a human body with finite levels of attention mean that we do have to forget certain things in order to live. To move forward, we also have to remember the deep care for one another that makes us human, and a sense of belonging to something greater than the self. So that's a really interesting and lovely way of describing the Judgment card. I really like that. And yeah, that is, again, another reason why I think I'm really going to enjoy this deck, especially in conjunction with the book that is by the same author. And then we have the final card in the Journey of the Major Arcana. It is the World. This is another one where it's not so much a scene. Well, it is, but it's also just kind of like, here's a person flying in the sky, and then we have, you know, a person's head, an eagle's head, and a lion's head, and a cow's head, and a wreath. So there is symbolism, but it's not quite as obvious at first. So this is another one that I don't know, I don't find as quite interesting to look at. But this person is sort of in balance. They're flying through the air, have reached sort of, maybe not the ultimate level, but they've reached the end of their journey. They're ready to begin again. And then we move into the Minor Arcana. We have the Ace of Wands, which, as always with the aces, is a hand holding or interacting with the item that the suit is. So we have an Ace of Wands, you know, holding a stick. I do like the leaves, though. And we have the Two of Wands. We have the person with his two wands looking at the earth, the globe that he's holding, and he's looking out over maybe a kingdom, a city, and, you know, he has that sort of sense of adventure, but also responsibility. And then we have the Three of Wands. Again, we're having that sort of sense of looking out over the ocean. There's boats. He has his three staffs or wands. Again, I enjoy these green colors immensely. And we have a Four of Wands. These people are celebrating. We have all of the sort of bounty of flowers and grapes and fruits. So this is less so something growing, more so something that's been harvested that they can enjoy. And we have the Five of Wands, people sparring. They look like they're fighting, but more so practice fighting or, you know, helping each other learn, perhaps. It's a little bit chaotic, but it's not vicious. We have the Six of Wands, or maybe a ruler or some sort of leader on horseback with his staff, and there's a wreath. And he's also looking off into the distance, as are these people. The horse is looking at us, though, interestingly enough. We have the Seven of Wands, this person fighting off perhaps these staffs that are being wielded at them. He is on top of a cliff. It almost looks like a mountain range, like he's a giant, but I do think it's supposed to be a cliff or just an outcropping above everyone else. He has the high ground, to quote Obi-Wan Kenobi. We have the Eight of Wands, which is 8 wands sailing through the air. Very traditional, very sort of direct. This is kind of similar to Chariot energy, but not quite. You will find that there are a lot of cards in the tarot that are similar to others, but have different sorts of flavors or lenses to look through. We have the Nine of Wands. This person is maybe responsible for keeping all of these wands upright. We have the Ten of Wands, where this person is responsible for carrying them all, so a little more responsibility. He's making a walk, a trek across this field or land to over here, and he has to decide if he can carry all of them or if he will put some of them down. And we have the Page of Wands. So now we're into the first of the court cards for this suit. and he's got some sort of lizard, it looks like, on his outfit, his tunic, his shirt, and he's got a little cape, and he does look like he's ready to go into action with this staff. We have the Knight of Wands with a bigger version of the lizard print. I'm glad to see that I could tell what it was appropriately. And he's on a horse. He's in motion, as the knights are. We have the Queen of Wands. No more lizards, but we do have some lions and some sunflowers and a little black cat. I'm partial to black cats. You saw my orange cat, but I do also have a black cat, so partial to black cats. I do really like this. I feel like it sort of shows the Queen of Wands is creative, but in control. She has, I don't know how to explain it. I do like this Queen of Wands. I feel like it shows her level of command over the skills and the traits associated with the suit of the wands. And now we have the King of Wands. We brought back the lizards and the lions, and we have a lizard down here. They're probably actually salamanders now that I think about it, because salamanders are associated with fire. The reason for that is that in the Middle Ages and ye olde times, lizards would crawl into pieces of decaying, rotting wood and log piles and stuff like that, because as the things broke down, they released heat, which is how compost works as well. So when you would throw a piece of wood onto the fire, or several pieces of wood, you'd maybe see all these lizards, these salamanders scuttle out. So the idea was that lizards were perhaps born of fire. So that is why you see salamanders in association with fire, even though it feels like maybe they'd be earth or water. And now we are on to the suit of cups. We have the Ace of Cups, a hand holding a cup. If you couldn't tell, this suit is associated with water. We have the Two of Cups, two people holding cups. You have the, I'm going to butcher this word, the catechis, I think, sort of here. I'm probably not saying that right, and I think there's a difference between it being one snake and two snakes. I'll have to look that up, I can't remember. But Two of Cups, it's the beginning of a relationship, people working in harmony, again, similar to the lovers. And we have the Three of Cups, these three people singing and dancing. They've got all sorts of a bounty around them. They're not worried. They have what they need. They're celebrating. Very much Three of Cups energy. We have the Four of Cups. I love this sort of pouty look this person has on their face. Like, yeah, I have 3 cups, and I'm mad about it, and I don't even notice the 4th cup being offered to me because I wish I had more cups. We have the 5 of Cups. This person's sad over the spilling of these 3 cups. Perhaps he's ignoring the 2 cups that are already upright. They don't maybe feel enough, I don't know. But yes, the 5s are not usually happy cards. And then we have the 6 of Cups, these people sharing and being together and generally speaking looking happier than in the previous couple cards. Have the 7 of Cups, all sorts of choices, and you have to decide which one you're going to pick, which ones are real, which ones aren't, what will happen if you pick the cup that you pick. And I noticed here in this one there's a little bit of a skull that's sort of really subtle, so even if you pick this sort of laurel wreath, which was associated with victory for the ancient Greeks, perhaps it would be not so great. You have the 8 of Cups. When I first started doing tarot, I would pull this card along with the 7 of Wands, I think, all of the time. I was clearly going through it when I started doing tarot in 2016. So we have a person leaving behind the 8 cups that they have, moving on to something new. And sometimes, even if you have really great emotional stuff, really great relationships, you have to move on anyways. And maybe those relationships will survive, maybe they won't. We have the 9 of Cups. He's got his cups. This card is usually associated with sort of getting your wishes granted, but is it actually what you want? Or is it, did you wish for something you didn't actually really end up wanting? And I do kind of like his smug look. I've got my cups sort of thing. We have the 10 of Cups, a big happy family. And that is the most traditional association with this card. And we've got them as a rainbow. It's interesting how they were able to portray this as a rainbow, even though it's not colored in, you still look at it, or at least I can still look at it and see a rainbow. We have the Page of Cups. They've got the water lilies on their outfit. Their sort of feather looks very sort of seaweedy, so it's all very watery, even though they're plants. Got a fish in their cup. We have the Knight of Cups, again in motion on a horse. There's fish on the tunic, I guess, the overcoat, whatever that is. We have the Queen of Cups. She's got her fancy dancy cup, her mer children on her throne. And again, we have a dress turning into water like we did with the High Priestess, which again, these cards have similar meanings. They're both very tied to emotion in different ways, so it makes sense that there'd be some visual connectivity between these two cards. We have the King of Cups. He is floating above the ocean on his throne, or maybe it's just built up high enough that he's not in the water. He's in control of his emotions. He's not overwhelmed by them, but they're close at hand. And then we have the Ace of Swords. And so we have sort of, it looks like maybe olive branches with the actual olives on them, the hand holding the sword, and leaves fluttering away. We have the Two of Swords, the blindfolded person holding the two swords crossed over their chest. They need to make a decision. Very, very traditional. Again, very plain. I don't think this card really has anywhere that's super detailed, so it's a very plain card, but I feel like it does work very well. We have the Three of Swords. It's a pretty standard, pretty iconic image. It's, you know, three swords stabbing a heart. It is what it is. We have the Four of Swords. You can see here, this is the really sort of detailed section on this card, perhaps. It looks sort of like maybe a geometric stained glass representation of someone perhaps being given a gift or giving something to royalty, to the king, to whoever's in charge. Perhaps that's one of this person's great adventures, but now they're resting, which really sort of relates to the Four of Swords. And we have the Five of Swords, and like I mentioned in the Five of Wands, this card looks like things maybe have gone a little too far, things got violent. It went from, you know, it's all fun and games until someone loses an eye to someone losing an eye. And, you know, these two people look pretty upset while this person is cleaning up the aftermath. Maybe he's cleaning up, or maybe he's stealing the swords, we don't know, but it looks like things kind of went not great here, whereas the Five of Wands is more of a mutual sparring sort of vibe, at least in my mind. And then we have the Six of Swords, and we have this person rowing the others away. They're going off on a journey, and yeah. Seven of Swords, this is another one that I received a lot, or pulled a lot, I suppose, when I started reading tarot. This card is associated a lot of times with not pulling a con, but like duplicity. He's stealing the swords, and you can see him walking away. He also kind of has like a smirk on his face, like he feels like he's getting away with something. I would like to see what it says, just because it's nice to see how the major and minor arcana descriptions vary, because quite often there's less about the minor arcana than there is about the major arcana. The Seven of Swords is often read as a card of deceit or betrayal. A person with a tricksterish gait has 5 swords in hand as he steals off, glancing over his shoulder lest he be caught and found out a thief. We can, and many do, interpret this card as an omen or a warning sign that trickery is afoot somewhere in our lives among those we are close to, but we can also see it as an invitation to identify a part of ourselves that diverts our attention from relationship red flags or other valuable data and directs our gaze towards something easier to look at or more palatable. Maybe the part of us that pulls the wool down over our eyes, like Little Red Riding Hood, willfully overlooking the enormous wolf's teeth and eyes and feet, poking out from her grandmother's nightclothes, obscures or distorts information as a matter of habit in keeping with an old, outdated relational pattern. If we're curious about our capacity to trick ourselves, this line of inquiry can offer a pathway towards understanding what in us drives the urge to forge relationships with people and situations that cannot be trusted, and gives us something to work with in ourselves. So that's an interesting way to describe it. It's pretty similar to how I look at the Seven of Swords. A lot of times I look at it as there's something about ourselves that we're ignoring, perhaps. Of course, there can be something such as I am transgender. You know, I don't identify as the gender I was assigned at birth, but I'm ignoring that because I'm scared or I haven't figured it out yet. Or it could be something like I always choose people that have shown to be harmful because I expect to be left, so I am, you know, creating a self-fulfilling prophecy, that sort of thing. We have the Eight of Swords, and this is a card that's been following me around a lot lately. And this card is a lot more about creating your own obstacles and not realizing that you are able to get out of it yourself. For example, this person is sort of trapped by the swords, but not really. She can probably shimmy out of the ropes. It depends. And yeah, it's an interesting card, and I think that it is depicted very well here. We have the Nine of Swords. This person has roses on their bed. I don't know, they're awfully small. I don't know if you can tell despite how zoomed in we are. There's a design down here as well of a person with a sword standing over someone who's kind of crumpled on the ground. And this is the card that my girlfriend playfully calls the "oh crap, I bought too many swords" card. And this has a lot to do with anxiety in your mind and overthinking, and I really enjoyed Tarot for Change, their description of this card. It really opened it up for me and understanding it. We have Ten of Swords, and this one is sort of hitting rock bottom. You are maybe feeling like you've been stabbed by a bunch of swords, for example, that sort of end of the world feeling maybe, but the implication is that you will be able to sort of bounce back, or maybe not bounce back, but like get up, pull the swords out, and eventually move on. We have the Page of Swords. I really do like this person, the way they're set up. I feel like it's really empowering. A lot of times it feels like the pages are kind of not intentionally described as inferior. Obviously there's a sort of intrinsic hierarchy to page, knight, queen, king, but beyond that, it often feels like pages are considered kind of silly, frivolous, they don't know what they're doing. But at the same time, that page energy of, I'm going to jump in with both feet, can be really helpful. So I really enjoy, sorry, there's a cat here, really enjoy that sort of vibe that we have going on here. Then we have the Knight of Swords. This knight is also in motion, probably in motion the most out of all of the knights, which makes sense considering the sort of meanings of this card. Someone who perhaps speaks before they thinks, you know, sort of that, you know, rushing into things even more so than the page. Then we have the Queen of Swords, who can often be considered by many people to be rather sharp, pardon the pun, very icy, very analytical, but I do think that it is kind of interesting that we take the queen that is the least emotional, the most analytical, and portray this woman as cold, calculating, mean, you know, whereas the queens that are emotional or more practical, more homey, like the Queen of Cups and the Queen of Pentacles or Coins, respectively, as more feminine, more traditionally welcoming. I think that's interesting. I don't think that it's necessarily a fault of any one deck. I think it's more so that is the portrayal of women at the time of the inception of the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, as well as the continuing perspectives of the patriarchy in modern day. But I do think that's interesting, and that would be something to consider when pulling this card in a reading. I do like, though, that all of the imagery around her is very soft, almost. She's got clouds on her cape, she got a little cherub, more clouds, butterflies, nothing like tornadoes or thunderstorms, other things associated with air that can be more harmful. So I think that's a nice juxtaposition with the actual sword. We have the King of Swords. He's got more butterflies, and he's got a cherub on his crown as well. He's sitting either in front of an obelisk or on a throne of some sort, and yeah, he's the King of Swords. We have the Ace of Pentacles. The hand is over a garden, a walled garden perhaps, with a gate leading out into the rest of the suit. I really like that. We have the Two of Pentacles. This person is sort of juggling these pentacles and keeping things in balance. This hat kind of looks like a thimble. I actually, of course I do, but I've actually got some here. This is a plastic thimble, so, you know, you can see what I'm saying, right? Of course I have a thimble on my shelf right in front of me. That is who I am as a person. And we have the Three of Pentacles. I really enjoy how each person is dressed differently. It really shows the different mindsets coming together to create this space that they're building, which is really the sort of cooperation and teamwork that is really emblematic of the Three of Pentacles. We have the Four of Pentacles. This person is hoarding or really stingily guarding his pentacles, his money, his wealth, his resources. And I think that this card really is interesting in the fact that I have all these ideas where I want to talk about these cards and the meanings of the cards, but I don't know where I'm going with them, so I guess maybe those will be some blog posts in the future or whole videos perhaps. Shameless plug for my blog linked down below. But yes, so this is the Four of Pentacles. Like I said, he's guarding everything. He fears it being stolen. He doesn't want to share. And I really think that this could speak to someone who has never had abundance in their life in any form. We have the Five of Pentacles, which has the two people, the wretches almost, outside of a church. They've got the stained glass window, which kind of represents that, the idea of perhaps a sanctuary, not letting people in, or perhaps they're so focused on how miserable they are, they don't even notice the sanctuary right next to them. Those are two different meanings. It really just depends on how you look at the card. We have the Six of Pentacles, which is about giving, but also the hierarchy of the person doing the giving to the people who are receiving, and that sort of power balance that you need to be aware of, as well as myriad other things depending on how you look at the card. We have Seven of Pentacles. This guy's been doing a lot of hard work, and I really, again, we've got more of those really detailed plants and the leaves. They kind of remind me of grape leaves almost, or maybe that's what they're supposed to be. I don't know. I had a grape arbor in my backyard growing up, and that's kind of what they remind me of. Got the Eight of Pentacles. This person is creating the pentacles very clearly. He's had some practice. He's refining his technique. And yeah. I've got the Nine of Pentacles, which is very much an abundance card. You have a lot. You are able to, live comfortably without fear of not having what you need. She has a sort of plant theme on her robes, which really makes sense because this is the suit associated with the element of earth. We've got the Ten of Pentacles. Very happy, very abundant card again. We've got more of a family sort of vibe going on. We've got older people, younger people, people in the middle, and lots of designs on the robes and lots of pentacles everywhere. I also love the dogs because I love dogs. Got the Page of Pentacles. Person holding up the pentacle, really looking at it, sort of to the detriment of all else. Perhaps that might be part of the downside of the Page of Pentacles energy, but also they have really good focus for what they need to do. We have the Knight of Pentacles, again on a horse, but the horse isn't moving, which really suits this particular knight. One of the big things about this knight is that he can get bogged down in the details and is too cautious, whereas a lot of the other knights are not cautious enough. We have the Queen of Pentacles, lots of symbols for abundance. We've got fruits and flowers and a rabbit. Of course, you've got the phrase of, breeding like rabbits or whatever. So, lots of abundance, a safe space, a home, protection, that sort of thing. She's very much the homemaker. Associate her maybe with like the goddess Hera or Hestia, or, just maybe Molly Weasley, I guess, from modern mythology or modern fiction. Not modern mythology, goodness gracious. And then we have, finally, the King of Pentacles. He's got grapes all over his robes. He's got lots of leaves, lots of plants. He's got a big old pentacle and a staff and a crown and a kingdom in the background. He's got, lots of resources, and he's in control of those resources. So what I like to do after I go through all of the cards is shuffle them for the first time and draw a card. It doesn't really mean anything. If it resonates with you, take it. If it doesn't, leave it behind. But it's a nice way to sort of inaugurate or break in every deck that I share with y'all on this channel. So I'm just going to do a little bit of overhand shuffling, and that is my preferred shuffling technique. I really struggle with doing other types, so this is, consistently what I do. And I just like to go until a card either goes flying out, I do read jumpers, or perhaps I will pick one that just sort of speaks to me the way it's sticking out. Like, for example, this one. And we have Temperance. So take that to mean what you want it to, or leave it. It is what it is, and yeah, that was the first pull for this deck. Alright, so that's this video. I will have links to both this book and this deck down below, and I will also include links to all of the other videos in the tarot playlist where I share different decks that I reviewed for all of y'all, as well as the short series of videos I made on all of the tarot decks and oracle decks that I have in my collection. I may need to update those videos sometime soon because it's been about a year, although my collection has been growing a lot more slowly now that I have so many decks, but you'll have to let me know. Would you like to see an update? Would you like to hear more of my thoughts about different cards and sort of writing about them? I could definitely see them being blog posts in the future or videos. Right now on my blog, I tend to talk more so about LBGT plus people from history as well as different days of awareness, but I definitely feel like tarot could be a good fit, as I am looking to combine these things more this year and in the future. So I believe that's everything. Thank you so much for watching this video. Be sure to like the video if you liked it, dislike it if you disliked it, but if you disliked it, as I always say, why are you still here? Go touch some grass, hug your loved ones, find yourself a nice beverage. And yeah, I'd love to hear from y'all, so be sure to leave a comment if you have anything to say. Have you read this book or ever used this deck? I've never actually seen this deck anywhere other than when I saw it at Barnes & Noble and purchased it. So to me, it's a fairly new to me deck. I'm curious, have you ever used it? Like I said, have you ever read this book? What did you think of it? Are there any other books out there about tarot that you really enjoy? I'm thinking about making a video about all of the tarot books that I have and whether I would recommend reading them and what you can get out of them. So if that's another video that you would like to see, be sure to let me know. And I think all that's left for me to ask you to do is ring the bell so that you know when I post a video, as well as subscribe. We do lots of things on this channel, but primarily right now it is tarot and bullet journaling and reading journaling content. And yeah, if you have any other ideas for videos, be sure to let me know. Like I said, I think that's everything. All of the silliness, all of the requests, but it really does help me out. So yes, thank you so much for watching all the way to the end, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye!